This video will be about how to fit filters to whatever you want to house them in. So let's say this might fit to the fan and I want to use this. So several things. First of all, I want to explain why it's important to make sure that all of these folds are filled up. So let's say that I can bend this piece of paper, that will help for this video. So let's say this is my filter. And let's say I have it glued to a container where my fingers are. Air could get in here and pass from one side to the other side without being filtered. So that's why it's important to fill up those folds on the side. Now I messed up on a previous filter. I used a ton, well not literally a ton, but I would say about more than an ounce of glue. It's been sitting inside of the printer hood for about a day and I can still smell the fumes from it. And in spite of all of that glue, if I hold this up to the light, I'm not sure if you can quite see that with the paper showing on the background. Let me see if I can get a different angle on this. This is not the best camera setup for what I'm trying to do. Should probably just take the camera off of the tripod. That'll be quicker, easier. Show you what I'm trying to show you. So if you can see that we're kind of center in the camera, you can see a bright spot, couple bright spots in the filter. I believe those are actually air gaps where air coming in this side could slip onto this side without actually passing through the filter. And that's something that we definitely do not want in our design. And great thing about making mistakes is it offers a good learning experience. And it occurred to me that what I could do is put a strip of material that doesn't let air through. For example, just a layer of duct tape. So glue and then a layer of duct tape all the way around the filter. And then if I put that into a container, all I need to do is make sure that there's a layer of glue or material that will keep air from passing, going all the way around the, let's say it's duct tape, that layer of duct tape on the outside. And because there's glue on the inside of the duct tape and it's covering this entire filter thing, as long as I cover this ridge or that ridge where the duct tape is uniformly, there's not going to be any way for air to pass from one side to the other side. But another thing is that the filter that you have might not be the size and shape that you want. And these filters are essentially like fabric, and they're not all that difficult to cut. And they're somewhat resistant to, they're not super delicate, so you can, definitely you don't want to, if you actually, if you ripped it so that, they're pretty tough, But if you manage to get a bit of a tear in one, actually having trouble demonstrating a tear, which gives you some idea that they're pretty resistant. But if you did get a small tear, that would let air through. But you can't cut them. So what I'm going to do right now is just take this razor blade and probably going to be more difficult to cut than I had hoped. One thing is I can start off by just cutting along one of these edges. This will at least let me there's usually some glue that runs down the filters that keeps the folds apart, just so that they work. If the folds all pressed together, wouldn't get an even distribution of air, and the filter would be a lot less, not less effective, but it wouldn't let air pass. So it'd be less efficient, not in terms of particles captured, but less efficient in terms of amount of work it takes to get air to flow through. So this, I think, is a good way to start with cutting these filters, is to kind of take advantage of the folds and make at least part of your shape based on the fold. See, which fold was I in? That was this fold. I'm going to grab something to cut with. Just so that I don't damage the surface underneath. So right now I'm cutting through one of those layers of glue. Okay, so now I have at least two sides cut, and now I need to do the other part. Thinking this might actually be... Now one thing is I don't want a bunch of small cuts like I'm starting to make right now. And the reason for that is, since I want to, when I'm done, seal this off, if I had a bunch of different places where it was cut, let's say it was cut here and here and here, then it will be really tough to make sure that I've got everything sealed. I guess another thing I could try to do is actually just kind of cut it one fold at a time. It's a little bit tedious, but it's one way of kind of making sure that you just have that one cut. Could maybe do two at a time, a little bit less, half as tedious. Razor blade is not being very effective there. Oops. Definitely we don't want to do anything that's going to stretch the material like I just did, because that could actually cause some small tears in the material that air could pass through. Of the different methods I'm trying right now, so far the one that seems to me to be the best balance between being effective and tedious is cutting across several layers at once with the razor blade, but I want to be careful not to make more than one place where I'm cutting, and then to just kind of do it like that. When you do go through those strips of glue, it's a little bit more difficult there. That seems to, if you're kind of patient and a little bit of a sawing motion and consistent, you can shave away some of the material. With the razor blade, but it helps if I do it like right on an edge, it's really tough to get a continuous bite with the razor blade. So it helps to have an area like this. The main part of my goal is I want to make sure I don't want the cloth to be cut in more than, or the filter to be cut in more than one place. So if I saw the razor blade back and forth very gently, I can get a single cut to go all the way from one side to another. And of course, where there's glue, it's a little bit tougher because that kind of grabs onto the blade. It's still possible to cut through it. You find a much more effective way of doing that, please post. And then of course the other way of doing it is to individually cut through folds like this. This might work better if you're trying to trim the final part of an edge down. I'm trying to do right here. And you want to avoid tearing gestures like you just saw just happen there. So So I want to have nice clean cuts. If I tear the material, I might create small air gaps that I can't see, but that will allow for more particles to get through the filter. Now I'm going to see. This looks like that will fit. And it does. And I probably could just glue that in directly. But I did have a problem with that before, and I want to show another method that might be a little bit more reliable. I also want to have as much uniformity, that's lack of changes, on the outer edge, so that when you do apply, however you make the barrier around the side, it's going to be less likely to have places where air can pass. So what I'm going to try now is putting a strip of glue and tape around the edge. So I need about one, two, three, a little bit more than 3 times the length of my diameter to make a circumference around the circumference. I'm glad that was off camera because I didn't quite manage to. This is how you can kind of mess up when you're trying to tear material apart or tear duct tape. So making the strip of plastic that I'll put along the side. And I think this will work for me. It's a little bit wider than my edge, and that's fine. I'm going to get this out of the way and pause the video. I like my cutting board to be as smooth as possible. It does get scratched, but when I need it to be smooth, that helps. And so for gluing, I'm using these cutouts from contractor bag, because while trying to use this material to make a hood, I realized that it's very resistant to anything that would stick to it. And this has a limit, once you mix it, of about 6 minutes. Echo, start a timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, starting now. By the way, I noticed you haven't asked me to create a reminder in a while. Remember,